topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Good afternoon, Orlando. Thank you for joining us today. We have a great show for you. This is the last Thursday of the month, so that means K. Bender Rimbaum. This is our Community Association show. It is our biggest show out of 50 shows we do each month. We appreciate your participation, and we have this attorney is becoming my favorite expert, because I don't know, sometimes you just have this rapport with somebody, and we just have this great rapport. Board certified attorney Alan Swartzide. Good afternoon, attorney.
Steve, I got a big problem with what you just said.
Becoming your
favorite. Becoming your favorite. Give me a break.
Hey, I've got a lot of experts and they all listen to the show.
All right, that's fair. Good to be here, Steve. Thank you.
You know what? We get so many letters thanking you, how you explain things to people. I had a guy who said, I went to an attorney's office, spoke to him for an hour, came out and had no idea what he was talking about. He said, with Alan's show, I understand it completely, the way he breaks it down.
Well, some attorneys do that simply because they want to look smarter than they are. Some attorneys do that because they want to bill more to explain what they just explained. It's just not the way that I operate, and it's not how our firm operates. We want it in plain English. We want you to understand it, and we want you to be able to take it to your 10-year-old child. And hopefully you're not, divulging attorney-client privilege materials. But if they somehow got on the board, we want you to be able to take that material to them and say, here's what's going on. And for them to understand all of the words put together. The goal is to put things in plain English, because if we're not doing that, then we're not really doing a service to our clients to actually give them legal guidance. Because that's the thing. If you're putting it in legalese, you're not giving guidance. You're showing how smart you think you are.
K. Bender Rimbaum is one of the finest law firms in the state of Florida when it comes to community association. And I got to tell you, it is this, Alan, it is one of the hottest topics in Florida right now with all the new laws. I'm seeing people that are suing boards, and I've never seen it this way before. But first of all, before we get into any of that, tell people about K. Bender Rimbaum.
Sure. Well, we've been in business since the 1990s, early 90s. We've got 21 attorneys, 8 board certified in community association law by the Florida Bar, another one who's board certified in construction. And this is really all our firm does. It's all we've really ever done is represent community associations. And I'll admit, on rare occasions, we do represent owners, but that's got to be a specific type of circumstance. 99.9% of our business is just working with community associations to streamline their operations and, frankly, just make sure that they stay out of trouble to the greatest extent possible, while also actually speaking, like I said, in plain English and giving solutions that actually work instead of, no, you can't do that, which is what a lot of attorneys will do. They'll interpret the law. And to me, that's not an advisor. That's someone who can walk into a courtroom and say, Judge, they can't do this. That doesn't help you if you need to accomplish something. So we try and create, or at least provide, solutions to what our clients want to accomplish. and let them know, hey, you can't do it this way in accordance with Florida law and your documents, but you might be able to do this thing instead. And beyond that, we just try and make sure that we're the firm that will respond. I won't say faster than anyone else, because there are some people that just have nothing to do all day and they respond immediately. But I will say that within one business day, you're going to at least get an acknowledgement that you reached out to us, especially me. I manage the firm's Orlando area office. We're in Winter Springs. And you're never going to reach out to me and not at least get at 11 o'clock at night hey, I'm sorry I didn't get to this today, but I want you to know that I did get it and we are working on it.
Alan, hey, Bender Rimbaum. Now, I got in trouble when I said this one time. I said that this is all you do is community association law, but Mr. K got on me about that, but 95% of what you do. But the reason I brought it up is there's so many firms that on their shingle, it says, we do PI, bankruptcy, community association law. This is mainly where you concentrate at.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Robert's frustration that it is probably closer to 95 than 100% of what we do, but it's rare that we will handle things that are not affiliated with our community association clientele. And we're not, a real estate firm masquerading as a community association firm. We are really focused on this area of law, which is why almost half of our attorneys are considered specialists by the Florida Bar in this area of law. That's not just I asked the Florida Bar to say that I know what I'm talking about and they signed a piece of paper. I mean, that is, you've mentioned it before, Steve, it's a grueling process. It's kind of like taking a specialized Florida Bar exam specific to this area of law. And so we really do focus on almost exclusively, and I will say almost, but this particular area of law so that our clients are getting the best possible service. And it's not just a firm that's going to have to look up every single statute that might come out there. The bottom line is that's why we have 3 attorneys willing and able to do a radio show once a month to answer questions that are not researched in advance. It's just, well, Steve, you let me know what the question was. I'll answer it. Someone that practices family law and says they also do association law on their website is not going to have that knowledge.
Alan, it blows me away because a lot of these properties, a lot of these associations are like running a huge business, but nobody gets
here's
paid
the thing,
to do this.
Steve, but here's the thing. You, and maybe you don't, I'm sure you do by now, but many people that are listening today won't realize when you're on the board, that's literally what you're doing. You're running a business. You are running a not-for-profit, sometimes for-profit, depending on how you were set up, but you're running a business, and people just don't realize that's what they're responsible for, is the proper operation and maintenance of a business that the business happens to be running a condo or HOA or co-op. So you're absolutely right. People act like that, but it's because they are running a big business. Now, it may be, a very small business and they're acting like it's a big deal, but to them, it should be a big deal. If you're volunteering for a board position, this should be one of the important things in your life, because you should care enough about the community that if you're going to step up, you really step up, instead of just saying, yeah, I'll serve on the board, and then being the person that shows up for, 1 out of every 5 meetings.
Alan, do you personally think that people could find better qualified people if it was a paid position?
I think you'd get a lot of people that are willing to take that pay that wouldn't serve otherwise. I would like to think you'll get more qualified people, but frankly, I think what's going to create more qualified directors is the educational requirements that the legislature came out with this year. I don't always agree with the legislature, but that's one I wholeheartedly agree with, that, you should have some kind of education on how to run a business. If, you were a farmer all your entire life and had accountants and business managers running the business side of the farm, that doesn't mean you know how to run an HOA. And you may have great organizational skills, but it doesn't mean you know that you have financials you need to file every year on behalf of your association, that there are certain things you can do that you would be able to do in other areas of business that would get you in trouble if you were living in an HOA. So, I think it's more the educational requirements. Yeah, maybe dollars would help. It might get people to come on board, so to speak, but you've already got qualified managers who are being compensated for doing the managing. So, it's the self-managed communities that have no one on the board that's ever run a business in their entire life that scare the heck out of me. But most of the other ones, they either have a manager who hopefully knows what they're doing, or you've got someone on the board that's at least been involved in business and understands the risks involved, and most importantly, understands when to ask that manager or ask the attorney or hire an engineer to find out, are we doing the right thing here? The are we doing the right thing is the question that I think really needs to be asked more than, we need someone who's being compensated. The other concern I have when it comes to compensating your directors is how much are they being paid? Because someone that's being paid 10 grand a year doesn't care that much about that job. Someone that's going to be compensated 300 grand a year is really going to care about that job. But think about what that costs each individual member of that community, because that's the thing. That's where those dollars are coming from. It's not coming from the state. It's not coming from profits. It's coming from your members. That's what assessments are, is payment for the expenses of the association. A lot of people don't understand that's why your dollars are going up every quarter, every year, because it costs more to maintain and operate your community because all your contractors are charging more. But I think that's the answer, is that unless you're going to make it where it's really worth it for that to be someone's actual job, which it already is for a manager, I don't think you can really cover enough dollars to make it worth it, where you're going to have qualified, business educated individuals doing the job. Whereas right now you've got a lot of business people who are doing the job because they don't want to see their community go to crap.
We had someone wrote us, they knew your show was coming on, and they're thinking about running for president of the board. And they want to know, they said, I really respect your opinion, and is it a tough position to hold? Now, he's asking for the president of the board.
Well, I mean, to be candid, no. The presidency is not a difficult position. You may be the mouthpiece of the association, you preside over the meetings, but in reality, if you've got a manager, that person's doing most of the job of the president. If you've got a board that is going to support what needs to be done and vote in favor of things, that's going to help tremendously. But most importantly, as president, you don't vote in that role. So that job in and of itself is not difficult, but being a director and the president, I will fully acknowledge, is a lot of work. So you're not looking necessarily at, well, is being the president more work than being the treasurer? Yeah, maybe an extra 10 to 20 minutes a month. You might need to be the one that talks to that contractor, but if you've got a manager, they're probably doing it for you. You're the one that needs to sign the contracts. That's really what the president does that other directors don't do. There's a couple things that a president does. It's usually going to be stated in your bylaws what that president's responsibilities are. But 99% of what a president does is actually act as a director, which is what your entire board is doing, just like you would. So when you ask, is it a difficult position? The position itself as an officer, not that tough. But the position of being a director, in and of itself, is super difficult, because like I said, you've got to be educated. You've got to understand that you're running a business, and you've got to do what's in the best interest of the association, even if it's going to hurt you personally. And that is a tough nut to crack. It's a tough one to get around for a lot of people who say, well, I don't want to do this because I'll have to pay X. Okay, but if that's what your business needs, you don't have a choice from a legal perspective. You have to do it unless you can find a way that you can accomplish the same safety goals in a different way.
We're starting to get a lot of questions about back-end parking, Alan. and they do not want their residents to do back-end parking. Does that take a vote? Does it have to be entered into the docs?
No, that can be just a board vote usually. It's just a rule. It's not going to be something that needs to be a covenant of your community. Usually, the reason that communities are doing that is to make sure that the people parking there are actually authorized to do so. So what you're doing is checking the driver's license of each vehicle that's parked in the community to make sure that it's actually a vehicle that should be parked there. Now, if you've got an open parking lot where everyone parks wherever the heck they want, and you don't have any parking issues where you're running out of parking spots, that's probably not going to be a big deal. Same with if you've got people that are parking in their own driveways in an HOA or a townhome or a condo, probably not a huge deal. But it's when you have a limited number of parking spots and you've got a bunch of guests that are coming to stay, or you're trying to find out whether someone is not allowed to rent on Airbnb, but they're doing it anyway, and things of that nature. That's really where that type of rule would likely come in.
Les in Winter Park says, can we set vehicle size restrictions in our small underground garage? Big SUVs and trucks stick into drive areas. Would the condo association be required to comply with that request?
If the request is for someone to be able to park a vehicle in the garage that isn't safe to park in the garage, my opinion would be that you can probably say, no, you can't do that. If it's going to be destroying pipes and things of that nature that are close to the ceiling because of the height of the garage, I don't think you'd have to allow that vehicle to park there. And the answer to the actual question is yes, I do think you'd be able to enact those restrictions regarding parking. Now, keep in mind, any rules that you might enact need to be supported in some way by your other governing documents. So this might require some kind of, documentary review or amendment by your attorney to make sure that you actually have the authority to regulate this. But in reality, when you're talking about your common elements potentially being destroyed because someone's lifted truck damages a pipe and it bursts, I think you probably have the authority to do that, even if the documents aren't very specific on that issue.
Jerry in Longwood wants to know, we have a small HOA and find it a problem to get 4 board member people. How can we get more people involved in the board?
If you're a small HOA, you only probably need 3 anyway. But if you're looking to get 4 or 5, the bottom line is you need to get people to care about the community, start having events within the community that bring the people together instead of just being a small HOA that really is just a small group of homes. If you can make it a community instead of an HOA, and in reality make it both, then people might be more inclined to get involved and more inclined to say, yes, this is something we care enough about to show up once a month for a meeting or however frequently you're having your board meetings. That there's really no major incentive you can give other than saying, well, if you join the board, you can watch Alan's webinars and get something out of them instead of just, watching all of KBR's shows and not knowing what the heck they're talking about. And frankly, not caring except to the extent that it impacts your property. But there's really, the problem, I won't say it's the problem, but it goes back to your question earlier about compensating your directors. There's really no payoff here. So if people don't care about the community, chances are, yes, that'll be the problem, is that people won't be willing to serve. With the criminalization of all these ridiculous things in the new Florida statutes this year, the Corporate Transparency Act being an issue, there are a lot of things that, frankly, other people that might have otherwise served are just not going to take the risks this year. So I can understand why people would be hesitant, but the bottom line is, if you get people involved and caring about your community in some way, then chances are you're going to have a better opportunity to bring people in and have them be invested in the community and want to be on the board.
Lori in Winter Garden wants to know, can we see all operation records of the association? Are those records confidential?
Well, you can see a lot of records of the operation of the association. So those are your official records. And whether you're in a condo or HOA, there is a statute that specifies that if you request to inspect those records, the association has to allow it. But there's a whole batch of groups of records, categories of records that the statute says are exempt from that kind of review. So if it's an attorney-client privileged record, it's not subject to that review. If it pertains to medical records that, the association might get in a personal injury matter or relating to an emotional support animal or a service animal, those types of things, any personal records other than basically how to contact the members, those types of personal and private records are generally not subject to inspection. So, what I would suggest, if you're not sure what you're entitled to, send the request, see what you get back. And if you get back nothing, then you know that the association is not doing the right thing. If you get back a bunch of records, but not others that you thought you would get, you might want to take a look at those statutes and see if what you were asking for is subject to an exemption from production, or contact an attorney that represents homeowners. I know a few personally that do a fantastic job, and often they'll reach out to me and say, hey, I got a client or a potential client that wants to pursue their association for XYZ. And my response is, okay, but did you look at this statute? Because it says they're not entitled to XYZ. And then that attorney can explain to the person that's requesting that, unfortunately, this is just something the statute says you don't get because it's private information. So some of the other things are like your QuickBooks access. No, you get a printout, not something that you can change the records of the association. I'm not going to go into detail. There's like 3 or 4 other categories, but I figure we're probably better served getting to answer another question. I think what I've said so far hopefully will help out the person that asked.
We're getting ready to go to our first break, Alan. Before we go, tell people about your schedule for your classes next month.
Oh, Lord. Okay. November 13th, for those of you that are going to be at the Condo and HOA Expo in Orlando, I'll be teaching 2 classes that day, one on covenant enforcement. The other one is going to be the legal update for this year for CAMs that are going to be there. Those are both offered for CEU credit. Let's see, November 6th, which is a little bit closer. We've got another legal update breakfast. We've got updating your governing documents webinar coming up. Let me go over to, I think I had the PDF open. There it is. Jumping into the present, your governing documents with Kirsten from our Tampa office. Community Roundtable Technology and Community Governance by Kirsten as well on November 12th. I'm at the Condo and HOA Expo on the 13th. Like I said, we have a board certification webinar as well. If you're not in Orlando or not going to the expo and you need that class for condos, it's November 13th with Danielle Brennan from our Palm Beach Gardens office. Another legal update on the 14th by Lisa McGill. These are almost all, except for the ones that I'm doing at the expo, these are all via Zoom. Elections for condos, co-ops, and HOAs on the 15th by Kirsten as well. This is a luncheon in Venice. And then an HOA board certification on November 21st with Emily Gannon of our Pompano office. My guess is we'll add 3 or 4 in there. I just haven't had time to plan them out because I think I counted 9 speaking engagements this month alone, and I was trying to take it a little easy next month. But right now we only have 1 day plus the radio show. So we're going to take it a little easy.
Great. Thank you. Let's go to break, and we come back. We have more with Alan Swartzide. K. Bender Rimbaum. We'll be right back.
K. Bender Rimbaum is a full-service community association law firm dedicated to the representation of community associations throughout Florida. On kbrlegal.com, you can learn more about their offices in Pompano Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, Orlando, Tampa, as well as throughout Miami-Dade by appointment. Several K. Bender Rimbaum attorneys are board-certified specialists in condominium and plan development law and assist clients with all matters of community association legal issues while keeping them up to date on new developments that affect their associations. K. Bender Rembaum is also a well-known provider of free legal education for managers and board members. Contact K. Bender Rembaum today by calling 800-974-0680. That's 800-974-0680 to reach any of their locations. You can also visit them online at kbrlegal.com or write to them at info@kbrlegal.com.
And we are back with the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV with your hosts, Steve-O, Sophia, and their expert guests.
And we are back. This is the Ask the Expert show. We're with you every Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. This is the last Thursday of the month, so that means K. Bender Rembaum. I believe Alan's got something he wants to get a clarification out.
Yeah, so I pretty much ran out of breath when I was trying to go through all the classes we've got going up this month. We're a little busy, but I did want to clarify how you register for those online for free at our website at kbrlegal.com. And that is, again, K. Bender Rembaum, kbrlegal.com, under the calendar tab at the top. Thanks, Steve.
Oh, that's good. And we just got a call from a property manager. She wants to know, what's the number, with all the new laws, what's the number one question that you get?
What the hell? That's the number one question. In reality, it kind of vacillates week to week as people start to try and figure this stuff out. The biggest question that we're getting is, why the criminalization of everything that a director might do wrong? And in reality, from my perspective, it's a couple legislators in South Florida, for the most part, that have decided that anything that goes wrong that makes the news in HOA or condo world, they have to make it a criminal penalty. I know that there are problems. I think it's less than 1% of communities in Florida that have those problems. Many of those problems are already illegal, criminalized acts, whatever you want to call it. And so, if it's already going to get you kicked off the board, I don't know why we need to criminalize it separately. If it's already a crime, I don't know why we need to make it a separate HOA or condo crime. And I have heard from several people, this was literally this week, discussion that I was having, that there are several sheriff's offices that are up for election this year that are actually campaigning on, I'm going to create a separate division to just enforce these HOA and condo crimes. So I think that's the biggest question, is how do we comply here? And the bottom line is, I hate to be a little self-serving, but you ask your attorney all of these questions if you're not 100% sure you're doing the right thing. And you spend the time, you spend the money to get an opinion instead of having to spend, tens to hundreds of times more money to try and fix the problem after you've created it inadvertently.
Alan, how did you work it out with all of your properties, explaining all the new laws?
Well, my partner, Jeff Rembaum, did it for me. He's very nice like that. He has a blog called Rembaum's Association Roundup. It goes out, I think, we're about once every other week. And he put out a fantastic newsletter that contained every single legal update pertaining to HOAs and condos and co-ops. And he does this every year for free. It's available on the website of the firm. It's available on Rembaum's Roundup website, which you can link through the firm under the resources tab. And it's just, it was 41 pages that he wrote. And just to help out all of our clients, and even people that are not clients can get it for free, just so that people can have a resource and figure out, okay, what the heck happened this year? And then, we had some clarifications from the legislature, and he put out another update and updated that article. So now that's what we're working on. The bottom line is, we're here to educate people to the extent possible. We think it's very important, and that's one facet of how we educate people, is through Robert K's Legal Morsels, Jeff Rembaum's Roundup articles, in addition to, being on the show with you and all the webinars we do and all the classes we teach at these live events. It's important for people to at least have those resources to refer back to without having to pay an attorney exorbitant amounts of money for every single piece of guidance. I mean, I'll be candid. If I don't already have an article that I've saved from Jeff's website or from Robert's blog, I almost always will look for one before I start drafting guidance to a client. Because if I can send that instead of charging a client for, an hour's worth of work and they get that for free, it's a win-win because I can move on to work on something else.
Bill in Longwood wants to know, why would our community do more construction where we have to add more money to our reserves when we are barely getting by now? That's a good question.
It is a good question. And I would in turn question whether this individual has checked whether this work was mandated by the municipality, whether it was something that there was an actual problem. Is this just some random amenity that's now being built and you guys have no money and all of a sudden someone's putting up a swing set somewhere for the community? Or is it, the stairs were falling apart and we got them done even though we had no money? When the stairs start falling apart, people start falling through stairs, which results in massive injuries and massive lawsuits. So, the answer to why would they be doing construction, I don't know. But it's entirely feasible that they're doing it to make your building safe and make it so that no one gets hurt, the association doesn't get sued, and as counterintuitive as it may sound, your assessments actually stay lower because you're able to keep your insurance policy rather than losing it, and you don't have to pay your, anywhere between $2,500 and $25,000 deductible because someone decides to file a lawsuit against the association.
Alan, what do you do if a community is upset on an expenditure and it seems really exorbitant? And again, people are having rough times right now. What can they do? Who do they go to say, why did you construct something? Why was it this much money?
Well, I mean, chances are the official records of the association are going to include whatever bids the association got for that project. Those records might also include, like I said, if you got a demand from a local agency saying you need to do this work or we will shut your building down, that's probably going to be in the records too. But in reality, yes, the board. The board is the body of people making, I'd say, 80 to 90% of the decisions for your community. So if you're not sure why this was being done, if you've got a manager, send an email to the manager or make a phone call. And, I understand people and associations don't have extra money right now. And the legislature is not really making that any better, especially in certain condos that have to have a lot of studies done and then do the work and put the reserves in, et cetera. But the bottom line is you got to know what work was actually done and whether it was necessary or proper before you go around saying it was an exorbitant amount of money when it may be that there's only one vendor in the entire area that does it and that's what they charge. It may be that there were 8 different bids or even 3 different bids the association got, and this was the lowest one. Now, understand you shouldn't necessarily always go with the lowest bid. You go with the best service you're going to get. But bottom line, I can't say that was wrong without knowing what the item was and what the impetus was for the association to decide, we need to do this. And when I say the association, it sounds like it's really the board because the members may not have voted on it. But whether it was somehow required or just something the board decided to do, that's where you really get into the nitty-gritty of, was this exorbitant or was it just something that had to be done and you don't like it? And I might not like it either.
She just wrote back, Alan. She said it was cosmetic.
Okay, but keep in mind, think about cracks in stucco. Those look like cosmetic things you just paint over, but they're actually signs of a much bigger problem. So, yes, I understand it appears to be cosmetic. If it's truly just cosmetic, I got nothing for you, and I am sorry that you're having to go through that. But even someone that's repainting might be doing it so that they can water seal the building and repaint on top of that. It's not just, well, we're putting another coat on. So it really depends on a lot more specificity than, well, this was cosmetic. Well, how do you know? Are you in construction? I'm not. I wouldn't pretend to know whether it's cosmetic or not. I wouldn't even begin to pretend to know. And I would be willing to bet that even our board certified construction attorney wouldn't presume to know, although he'd probably have a better idea than I do. So I'm not saying you're wrong, but what I am saying is look into the real nitty-gritty details of the situation, because it may be that you weren't aware that it looked like it was just a fresh coat of paint, but it was actually 10 different things that had to be done to protect your building.
Jordan in Clearwater, if an owner requested to see the documents that a public insurance adjuster submitted to the condominium's insurance company, would the condo association be required to comply with that request?
Well, that depends whether the association ever got a copy of that document. From what I'm hearing, it's something that a third party sent to another third party. So the association may not even have ever gotten that. If the association did get it, then, it's going to depend on the content of what's in there. If it's something that's truly confidential, it might not be disclosed. If it's the subject of potential or ongoing litigation that, was given to the insurance carrier so that it would be sent to an attorney who's representing the association, chances are that's not going to be subject to disclosure. But if it's just some random document, yeah, it might be. That's one you'd have to speak with an attorney about your specific circumstances to know yes or no. And if you haven't already sent the records inspection request in asking for a copy of it, or at least asking to inspect and copy it, then you really don't know whether the association is going to say no. And that's something I come across frequently. It's people telling me, well, they're not giving up their records. They won't let me see the financials. I don't know what's going on. But they never actually sent a formal request. They just yelled at the board during a board meeting, you won't let me see it. You won't let me see it. Okay, but in those words, there's nowhere that you actually mentioned, can I please see it? So I'm not suggesting that that's what our writer is doing, but make sure you've actually requested to see a copy before you start threatening the association.
That is really a great idea, because you hear so many people that don't take the time, as you suggest, and they just fly off the wall.
Yeah. Well, and that's a lot of times when I have people come to me and say, who can I talk to about this? Because I usually don't represent individuals, but I do refer them to a couple really good attorneys around here. When they come to me, my first question is, well, did you ever ask for this? And I'd say at least 20% of the time, the answer is no. Okay, well, before you reach out to the attorney that I'll recommend, I'd suggest that you actually ask for what you're looking for, not presume that the association simply won't provide it. And sometimes they come back to me and say, it's exactly what I expected. I sent the request and they ignored it. Okay, well, then here's the name of an attorney you should talk to. But, a lot of the time, they never come back because all they had to do was make the actual request instead of just complaining to the association.
Sal in Orlando, he is in an HOA.
Okay.
He said, I heard HOAs are no longer allowed to fine owners. Is this true for condos?
Okay, well, that's not true for HOAs or condos. There were changes to the way that you need to fine owners in an HOA this year, but there has never been a law that says you can't fine an owner at all. There were discussions about 8-9 months ago about whether or not that was a good idea to say no more fining in an HOA, but it didn't come to fruition at all. I don't even think that there was a bill proposed on that issue. So the short answer is no, that never happened. The longer answer is there's a lot that changed in the HOA fining process this year. Now, since you're specifically asking about a condo, I will tell you literally nothing about fining in a condo changed this year.
You talked about some of the new bills that you don't like. How about some of the bills you like?
Well, I mean, I really do think the educational initiative that the legislature put in place this year was a good one. There were some changes where last year we had the change in HOAs saying if it's not visible from from an adjacent lot or from the frontage of the property, then it's not enforceable. The legislature wisely this year added that you can also enforce if it's visible from an adjacent common area. So if your lot happens to be located next to the clubhouse, it's enforceable still. And if it's adjacent to a golf course, it's enforceable. They didn't fix the loophole. What if it's across the lake? Unless that lake is a common area in and of itself. And there's a lot more that needs to be fixed in that particular statute, but the legislature got one right there, in my opinion. There are a couple others that I'm okay with, but really nothing that I would say, oh, that was a great idea. I fully understand that the Florida legislature, to some extent, needs to comply with the demands of the individual owners. I just wish that it wasn't only the individual owners who they consulted with before putting some of these things in place that require multiple task forces of attorneys in Florida to try and fix them. I know my partner, Mike Bender, is working with his group, the Florida Legislative Initiative, Florida FLA. I can't remember what the actual term is. It's a CAI group. I'm working with a task force here in the condo committee of the Florida Bar. And this is hours upon hours of attorneys' time that we're giving up just within my firm to try and clean this stuff up. And it's not we want to make it better. It's we want to make it so that people understand what their obligations even are, because it's worded in a way that you can't really read it. You can't tell what you're supposed to even be doing under these new laws. So, I wish there was more input given by people that practice in this area before legislators said, here, someone vote on this. Unfortunately, that's just not how it's really been lately from what I'm being told. Now, I'll fully acknowledge that my legislative understanding is limited to what I'm told by certain people within the firm and certain people within the condo committee. But when you're hearing the same thing from pretty much everyone, I tend to believe it. So there are some things that I think were a great idea this year, but I'll be honest, not a ton of them.
Stephen in Orlando wants to know, can a board member that has not paid their assessment be kicked off the board?
Yes, but only if it's at least 90 days delinquent. It also depends in a condo whether you've given them notice, whether it's more than $1,000 that they owe. So in an HOA, it's different from a condo, but the short answer to your question is yes, in the right circumstances, or in this instance, the wrong circumstances. But that's statutory and it's not a board decision. That person is considered to have abandoned their seat. So you don't need a board meeting to make that happen. You just need to realize that they are that far delinquent, and in a condo, you need to provide prior notice and basically an opportunity to cure. I think it's a 30-day notice in a condo that needs to be sent. George
wants to know, does a developer always have the ability to terminate a condo?
No. They might have the opportunity to do that anytime before any of the lots are sold. But once they sell those lots, they become property of someone else, and those people would need to be involved in the process. And I won't get into the requirements to terminate a condo, but it is not an automatic that the developer can just say, yeah, we're done. We don't want to do this anymore. Condo's done. If someone has bought in. Now, if no one has bought in, then there's no one other than the developer to vote on that. So chances are, yes, they can go ahead and terminate.
Sally wants to know, you might have to help me on this one. On a reserve study that is 100% funded, do the members get to vote on it?
So I think what's being asked here is if you have a reserve study and you are adopting your budget for the coming year that fully funds reserves, meaning you're basically saying, yeah, we're funding everything. No, the members don't get to vote to fund the reserve because there's nothing to vote on. The board just puts all that into the budget and they're doing it the right way. If the members want to reduce or waive that reserve, as long as it's not certain types of reserves, that's what the members would vote on. So the way it's supposed to work is the board fully funds the reserve. The members get to vote if they want a different budget that doesn't fully fund reserves.
Jack in Orlando, this is an HOA. On the website, our board has placed our official document visible to the general public and the membership. Is this wrong?
Can you repeat that? I'm confused.
On our website, our board has placed our official documents visible to the general public and the membership. Is this wrong?
So
I guess they mean to the general public.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you mean by placing your documents. What are your documents? If you're talking about the declaration, the articles, the bylaws, the rules and regulations, things that are really public record already for the most part, or agendas and meeting notices that need to go on the website according to the Florida statutes, not yet, but in the near future, those things can all go on the front page. If we're talking about records that are supposed to be behind login credentials, like an owner's ledger or something like that, or things that the members are not even supposed to see in the first place, other than the board, the manager, and the attorney, all of those things should be behind login credentials and not accessible to the general public. But your governing documents, your meeting notices, meeting agendas, those things are actually supposed to be on the front page. Also, information about your manager, if you have one, is supposed to be on the front page. But there are certain records that shouldn't be. It just depends what records you're talking about in particular. So what documents do you mean?
Rose in Orlando, she is a property manager.
Okay.
And she's already had 2 condo terminations. Can you explain terminations?
I already promised I wouldn't. But essentially what we're doing in a termination is doing away with the condominium regime. So we're taking it from, here is a building comprised of a bunch of different rooms and subrooms, which are the units and the rooms within the units, and we're making those separate pieces of real property. What a termination does is makes it all one piece of real property. Everyone that was an owner in the condo gets paid out. It's supposed to be fair market value. And now that this condo is terminated, you usually will either knock it down and do something else with the land, or you turn it into an apartment complex or create a new condo on it. So basically what you're taking is, what you're doing is saying, this is no longer John Smith Condo. John Smith Condo doesn't exist anymore. Not only is the corporation shut down, but the entire operation is shut down. If the people that lived there before want to continue renting, they can pay the current market price that we're charging for it. If people don't want to sell out, then they can try and block that termination. And what's required as to the specific vote for that termination is really going to be an issue for your attorney to take a look at, because there's a lot that goes into that analysis. It's extremely detailed, but not extremely complicated, if that makes sense.
Well, that's perfect. That's a great place to end today. Another great job, Alan. God, the month goes by so fast. You'll be back with us again next month. Tell people how they can reach K. Bender Rimbaum.
All right. Well, the easiest way to reach me is via email. My email address has been up on the screen all day, but for those that are listening separate from watching, it's AS, meaning my initials, Alan Schwartzide, at kbrlegal.com. And if you want to call our office, it's 1-800-974-0680. If you're happy with your attorney, stick with them. But if you're not happy with them or you don't have one, feel free to reach out. We do practice statewide.
Beautiful. Alan, have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
I'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
That's board certified attorney Alan Schwartzide, K. Bender Rimbaum. That's it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.